I'm Riley Reese. This is the Sophia Unfiltered podcast where we bring together thought leaders, wellness entrepreneurs, makers, and emerging health leaders. We're here to have raw, unfiltered conversations because sharing your stories has the power to change lives, help others heal, and transform the way we take care of ourselves. Here we go. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Sophia Unfiltered. Today, we are sitting down with the director of the Nutrition Therapy Institute, Diane. Diane has been a leader in the field of nutrition education for 15 years and an acquaintance of mine for quite a few years now since we've been building Sophia Health. She's committed to helping people realize their optimal wellness through recognizing the full and inescapable impact of their food choices. NTI specifically provides comprehensive training in holistic nutrition for those wanting to make a difference in the world by sharing what they know about nutrition, wellness, and natural food cooking. Under Diane's guidance, NTI students are empowered with science-based curriculum, coupled with customizable strategies that are immediately implementable for themselves, their families, and those they interact with, from coworkers to clients. Welcome, Diane. How are you today?
I am good. Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah, well, I'm excited to dive into our topic today, which is nutrition education, right? You've been a leader in the field, you run a program, you run a school, you've educated many people. So, for those who might not know you, do you want to give us a little bit of a background on you and everything that you're doing in the world of holistic nutrition?
Yeah, absolutely. So, for me personally, I became interested in nutrition like so many people do because my son, my newly born infant son, when he was very young, a couple of months old, started developing some health conditions. I started developing health conditions. My husband had health conditions. And I just realized that there was something else out there. And I started to understand the impact of nutrition on health and made a lot of nutritional changes over several years. And, was able to bring to these nutrition changes were made my husband able to stop taking medications that he had been taking. And I started to find improvement. My son had improvement. And so it prompted me to want to learn more. So I myself went to school. I've been involved with NTI for many years, since 2005. I was a student here, graduated from here, became an instructor in 2010. And then in 2019, when the original founder of the school decided to retire, she asked me if I'd be interested in taking over the school because she knew that I would continue the mission of the school. And I have done that, and that's where I am today. So here we are. And, we are really dedicated to teaching comprehensive nutrition education, science-based. So we teach chemistry and biochemistry and anatomy and physiology so that people really understand the human body. And then we teach the science of nutrients so they understand how nutrients interact with the human body. And then by having that science-based education, our students and then graduates develop a high level of confidence and competence to be a holistic nutrition professional. They can show up with their clients with certainty and confidence and, authenticity, having a really deep understanding about how nutrition influences health. Because nutrition truly is the cornerstone of well-being. And yet, so many people, the vast majority of the population, really doesn't know how to make food choices that ensure that they are consuming, optimal nutrient intake. And that's why we're here, to train practitioners so that they can then become those nutrition therapists that help guide others in making better food choices.
There is so much to go through, and I'm absolutely super excited to jump into this. And it's almost like, where do we start, right? So food choices, but before we jump into food choices and education, I kind of want to go back a little bit to what was that trigger, right? So I have a 1-year-old now. What happened back then that made you jump into this? What were some symptoms for our listeners out there who may be
Right.
feel good?
For my son, moms, when our kids are sick, that raises to the level of attention, right? My husband
To say the
Um,
least. That's an
yeah,
understatement.
yeah,
Especially new moms, okay? I
right,
tell you,
right. Yes,
get out of my way. My
yeah,
doctor, my pediatrician probably thinks I'm crazy. I don't even
yeah,
care. You don't even
yeah,
care. Like,
yeah.
get me the
I
help
know.
I need immediate. Like, you'll stop at nothing, okay?
That's right. That's
At
right.
nothing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, true mama bear. So my husband had had asthma his entire life. And so he came into our marriage, and then we had our son 7 years later. Came into our marriage having asthma and having to take 3 different steroid based inhalers every single day, twice a day, just to survive. And to me, I was like, okay, that's what you have. That's, just part of who you are. And I didn't really think a whole lot about it. But then shortly after my son was born, he developed severe eczema. And then very quickly after that, developed asthma. And, he was hospitalized a couple of times because of his asthma as an infant. It was quite scary. So fast forward, when he was 4 years old, I took him to his very first dentist appointment and he had 10 cavities, 2 of which were so bad that he had to have what's called baby root canals. And they do a root canal on the baby teeth, which there isn't really a huge root there, anyways. And then he had to have these silver caps on his teeth. And so until those baby teeth fell out, when he was 12, 13, 14, whatever, every day I got a reminder, seeing those silver caps in his mouth, every day I got a reminder that something about my nutrient intake when I was pregnant and while he was, in those very early formative years, something about our nutrition was off and he was susceptible to and developed a bunch of cavities. And we didn't eat sugar. Like he didn't have his first candy uh, until he was like 4 years old or 5 years old. We didn't eat sugar, we didn't eat junk food, and he developed these cavities. And I was devastated because I thought I was doing everything right. And his dentist said, "Oh, don't worry about it. It's genetic. It's all genetics, and there's nothing you can do about it. And don't worry about it." So he got all these fillings, these baby root canals, etc. And I quite honestly was sort of in this massive depression because I was like, I thought I knew what I was doing. Like I didn't have any nutrition training, but I just taking in information from
Yeah,
wherever I
like you
could find
do.
it. Yeah,
Absolutely. I've got a baby with 8 teeth, and I'm in the same exact situation right now. Like, we're about to go to our dentist. I mean, I really can feel this,
yeah,
like I can
yeah.
really relate to
It
this.
it was devastating, and I was quite honestly depressed for like I was just like, "What have I done? What have I done?" Because I knew there was something about nutrition, and I stumbled on to a book called "Nourishing Traditions" by Sally Fallon, which she's the president of the Weston A. Price Foundation, and the Weston A. Price Foundation is based on Dr. Weston A. Price's work in nutrition, and he wrote an original book called Nutrition and Physical Degeneration. So I read both of those books, and I suddenly realized all the mistakes I had been making. And we made a complete change in our diet, 180-degree change in our diet. And, for my son, he never had another cavity after that.
So can you oh my goodness.
Yeah, he never had another cavity after that. Well, until he was 17 years old. And that's a whole other story because at
Yeah,
a 17-year-old, he had a car, he had a job, he had his own money. So
yeah,
he was buying his own.
that's not mom's
Yeah.
choices.
Yeah. And for my husband, he completely stopped taking all of his medication and his asthma that he had had for his entire life since he was an infant completely went away. And so,
So, but you weren't eating junk food, so what changed? What
yeah,
happened in this book?
what changed is, I mean, I'll just say we were vegan, and what I came to realize is that we were highly deficient in really key nutrients, vitamins A, D, K2, and minerals. And so when I learned about that and we started incorporating animal foods and prioritizing nutrient rich animal foods that provide those nutrients, those vitamins and minerals, it completely shifted the health of, of our entire family. And that is really what sparked my interest. I was like, oh my God, this is fascinating. So I knew that I wanted to go to school. So I started school in 2005. So my son would have been 6 years old. I found NTI. I went to school here. Every day I woke up and I just was so grateful. I've even said to myself, I feel so blessed to be able to get this information because I don't think people get this information unless they actively seek it out and go to a place where that is your goal, is to immerse yourself in this knowledge and get this information. And then after I graduated and started seeing clients, I just saw so many changes in their health, and they were able to achieve wellness goals that had not been achievable for so long. And it truly just comes from, well, understanding nutrients and the role they play in human biochemistry. Like, we teach the mechanisms of action. How exactly do these nutrients participate in biochemistry? So understanding that, and then understanding how to identify the foods that are the most reliable bioavailable sources of those nutrients. And that is truly how you can start making better food choices. Because until you have that information, it's really hard to make good food choices because we are so bombarded with messaging from food labels and big food companies through media and even like so-called health and nutrition experts. We are bombarded with all this information, but what I have come to realize is that the vast majority of it is completely wrong. And that's because all of this knowledge that they think they're getting this good knowledge, it's actually directed at increasing the profits of the companies, the big food companies that are making these foods. And it really has nothing to do actually with health and wellness. And I learned, once I started like understanding this, and it started to dawn on me how poorly we are educated about health and nutrition kind of out there, because we don't invest time and money into educating ourselves. It makes me angry, sort of, like, how can this be? And we live in a society where 90% of the population has poor metabolic health. Within adults, something like, I don't know, 75, 80% of the adult population has at least one chronic condition.
And I think
children,
that's right. And I think it's about 40% or something the last time I checked. This was years ago. 40% or more have comorbidities, two or
yes,
more. Right?
absolutely,
So
2 or more. Absolutely, you are correct.
that means almost half the population, okay,
Absolutely,
has two or more.
and children. The last research that was actually done and published, what comes from 2011, at that point, 54% of children had at least one chronic illness. And by now, we're 11 or 12 or 13 years past that. And the rates are not going down. I mean, it is
No, they're not.
obvious the rates of chronic illness.
And you know what else
down.
is going up too, along with this, because food plays such a huge role in mental health, physical health, the
Yes.
anxiety
Yes.
among kids. I think they said something around the females going to college. I think they're around 50 to 54% are going in with an anxiety or depression diagnosis into college. So I don't know if that was a COVID or when they started this, but the anxiety is peaking as well. So I'm not sure if you can speak to that has an effect on this.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the way your brain functions is based on nutrients. I mean, every single thing that happens in the body, whether it's me moving my hands, me thinking, being able to, remember and learn, being able to move, my liver being able to function, every single thing that happens in the body happens as a result of there being nutrients available. And those nutrients, include vitamins, minerals, phytonutrients, et cetera. And those nutrients have to be there at the right time, in the right amounts, always. And nutrients have true physiological actions. And when you are deficient in nutrients, those physiological functions will suffer and dwindle to the point where you're going to stop having proper function. And so certainly brain health, mental health has a huge impact with nutrients and nutrient deficiencies.
It's really interesting what we're getting into here too. So you graduated, you went to school in 2005 and graduated and started seeing clients.
Yeah.
So when you graduated, what was your title? What do you get when you graduate from the NTI school?
So we have a couple of different ways that you can participate in our program. So it's anywhere between 18 months to maybe 2 to 2.5 years that
Wow,
it takes
those are
people to
long.
graduate. Yeah, it's there's 13 courses. Each course is 10 weeks, and depending on how many courses you take at one time, and if you take breaks. So, it took me 2 years to go through the program. And when students graduate and become graduates, their title is Nutrition Therapist Master. And so the letters are NTM, Nutrition Therapist Master. And what this is it's a designation that shows that our graduates and practitioners that have this title have mastery in the knowledge and skills that are necessary for them to be, you know, holistic nutrition professionals who have the education and the skills and the confidence and the clarity about what truly it means to eat a nutrient dense diet.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I just wanted to touch on the titles a little bit, right? Because
Yeah.
nutrition therapist master is not as commonly heard. We all know kind of holistic nutrition now, like that's growing. But
Mhm.
pretty prevalent is the nutritionist and dietitian in this
Yeah.
space.
Yeah.
Right. So I just want to get into a little bit of this differences because I think it's really important when it comes to this education piece.
Absolutely. You are absolutely correct. And there is a lot of confusion. So I'm glad you asked the question. So, first of all, nutrition therapy there is no licensure, it is not a licensed practice. Dietitians get licensure. And so, dietitians, it's a 4 year college degree. They're now requiring some master's level in order to get that license to become a licensed registered dietitian. And dietitians, what their training really prepares them to do is to work in hospitals and a very medical based setting, delivering menu plans based on directions from a doctor.
So,
Um,
for an example for our listeners, that would be somebody who's working with cancer patients who have
yes.
probably like, I can't have this intravenously, I can't eat this way. So, you're trying to find how to get the nutrients to the person when they potentially have these comorbidities and they can't just eat the traditional meals. Is that kind of
That is correct. Yeah. And then there's this other title, nutritionist, and nutritionist is a protected title, meaning that, well, it's protected by law. And so only certain people can call themselves nutritionists. And there are only certain schools that provide you with the education that allows you to have the title nutritionist. And again, these are usually 4 year college level schools, college level degrees. And, I think there's just a handful of them that you get this title nutritionist. All the rest of us that are holistic nutrition professionals, the title that you get is provided to you by the school. So each individual school has its own title. And so you can't compare title. Once you get into the holistic nutrition realm, you can't compare titles to determine what that person knows, what their education was, or, anything. That's when you have to actually start doing research on the school if you are looking to go to school, because there is no overarching, agency or, federal agency or anything like
licensures?
that. There
Right.
is no licensure. And so the title is designated by the school. So this title that we have here is only available to graduates of NTI. Same thing with any other school that is a holistic nutrition training school. That title is specific to that school. So for someone who's looking to get this education, they really have to do their due diligence. The onus is on them to investigate the school, understand what the curriculum includes, the depths of, how far you go into the science and the comprehensiveness of it. And there are some people who can take, a weekend intensive, 16-hour intensive over a weekend and become a quote unquote nutrition therapist. But I am
I'm sorry, did
absolutely
you
what?
say I'm sorry, just to clarify, you said you can become a nutrition therapist in 16 hours over a weekend?
Yes, there are some programs that are as short as a weekend program and they become, whatever the title is that they're granting due to that.
I shudder.
I know.
I am literally from a, I know you run a program and you're in the education and you're trying to scream this from the rooftop and, we're running Sophia Health. I shudder at how the consumer is affected.
That's
The
right.
nutritionist is protected and the holistic nutrition is like the Wild West.
Yep.
And do you think me as a consumer, like we're trying to educate people on, hey, eat healthy and do holistic nutrition. And now I have to go look up the school's education. First of all, this is why Sophia Health exists. But second of all, this is terrifying that from a customer who's looking for help could get help from somebody who went to, I mean, I think you have to do more driver's education than
Yes.
to drive a car than
Yes.
to teach people what to put in their body.
Yes. Yeah. And that is unfortunate. It is horrifying from the consumer standpoint to be able to
That's me.
identify practitioners.
That's right.
And so really what the consumer needs to do is interact with the practitioner, ask questions, and if the practitioner then it becomes interpretation from the consumer standpoint of if the practitioner can speak to the level that they believe signifies some sort of knowledge and credibility. But you said a statement, we're looking for people, or I forget exactly what you said, but eat healthy, like that term eat healthy is out there, but you have to understand, what does that person mean when they say eat healthy, right? Because eating healthy may be one thing, and we really don't here at NTI, we don't talk about quote unquote healthy eating. We talk about nutrient density and being assured that you understand what are the most reliable sources of all the nutrients that are required for body function. And so when you start having conversations with people, like, well, what's the most nutrient dense, like how do I, what's the most reliable source of X nutrient? If that practitioner can't reel off a list of foods that they are for sure highly reliable sources of a particular nutrient, then that kind of can tell you something potentially about the level of their training. And then asking questions, well, what exactly does B12 do? If you're using B12 as an example, what exactly does it do? If they can't really explain to you from a biochemical science-based perspective, that again
Is a
is
red
going to
flag.
indicate
Got it.
some level of their education. Yeah.
Because you don't realize, and then it gets into I'm comparing apples and oranges because these titles are so different. And then what do you actually look at? So the nutrition therapist master, so you were helping clients for years. And when
Yes.
you went through this 2-year program, you were just, I guess, blown away at what you learned
Absolutely.
from
Yeah.
the cellular level, from a nutrient, from a science back perspective.
Mhm.
Why do you think, and you went 2005, why is this holistic nutrition thing not spreading?
Yeah.
What is going on?
Well, I mean, quite honestly, there are two organizations. A primary one is the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, and they're the sort of umbrella agency for dietitians. They are going state by state, and enacting legislation that restricts the practice of holistic nutrition so that no one else can provide nutrition guidance besides dietitians. And that is quite honestly a hurdle that we have as holistic nutrition therapists. So I'll just give you a little tip that there's an organization called the National Association of Nutrition Professionals, the NANP, and they have a page on their website. It's called the Legislative Affairs page. And that provides a map that tells you what the scope of practice and what the restrictions and requirements are for practicing in each state. What's
Which is
interesting,
because from a customer standpoint, when you're like, oh, we're trying to ban holistic nutrition, like,
right?
Again, we know some of it can be the Wild West because of
Yes,
licensure, but
that's right.
similar to the health coaches, why hasn't somebody come in like the NAMP and said, the organization body, we're going to certify, which that's what the NAMP was supposed to do.
That's right.
Why don't they say, hey, you guys need to, there should be different lanes. Like there's a holistic nutrition, just like functional medicine has its place.
Right.
Right.
Well, and they are doing that. They do have, like I said, this page where this map is called the Legislative Affairs Division page, and they have a legislative affairs specialist who does go when these bills are submitted in the individual state legislatures. She actually goes and submits documentation, but the kinds of things that she sees is the powers that be are misinforming legislators. Oh, those nutritionists, they don't know what they're talking about, and they don't know anything, and it's kind of voodoo, and it's the Wild West. And so she goes in and she says, no, 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 no. Those schools that are approved by NANP, which we are, they have a strict NANP dictates the guidelines of what we need to include in our education. They don't tell us what we have to teach, but they give us kind of a checklist. You need to teach a certain level of anatomy and physiology and biochemistry and digestive health and all those kinds of things. So,
So it is regulated. Absolutely. Right.
Yes, it is. So there are schools out there that are not approved by the NANP. So here's another way to find a good school, and that is by looking at the NANP website, because all the schools that are approved by NANP are going to meet their requirements. And then the NANP has an additional level of credential, which is board certification. So there is board certification for holistic nutrition therapists. Through the NANP, you must have graduated from an NANP approved school to get board certified. But then that board certification is trademarked and for national use. So even in states where there are restrictions, someone who's board certified can practice. So
that's incredible.
That's an additional level. That board certification kind of brings you on that higher level that is more well recognized. Certainly in the medical field, board certification is recognized. That is something that, we also recommend to our graduates. After graduating, go on and get board certified, because that's really going to expand your job opportunities and your credibility.
Yeah, absolutely. And very needed at this point too. No, thank you for explaining that. I just feel like the nutrition battle between, with really what's going on, I think it's just really important to drive awareness to the credibility, but you got to find the right practitioner. You have to make sure they're board certified. It's a lot of work on the consumer's end who just needs the help. Like, I have a baby, I haven't slept, he has an issue, and you need help. Board certified holistic nutrition, you can count on them to have the credibility and the stamp of approval from the NANP.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I'll just add one other sort of detail here and caveat here. Something happened in October 2022. There was an investigative evaluation that happened at the AND, the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. And I'm just going to read the title of the paper that came out of this: The Corporate Capture of the Nutrition Professionals in the USDA, the Case of Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. And what they found is that top level officials at the AND, as well as the AND itself, is getting funding from all those big companies that are causing all the problems, like all of these big food organizations. And so that really reduces the credibility of the information that these dietitians are providing when you recognize that they're being funded by the very same industries that are causing or playing a huge role in this chronic disease epidemic that we have going on.
And we probably shouldn't say this, this is unfiltered, but I'm assuming that means they're getting the money from these organizations so they can afford to go state by state picking off you guys potentially.
Yes, they do have deep pockets. That is for sure.
Is that illegal? I mean, is that why there was a case opened on this, or is it closed?
Well, it's not necessarily a legal case, but it was, some
ethics standpoint.
Yeah, it was some people who just wanted to investigate, like, the A&D is this sort of arbiter of what is nutrition in the United States and what should nutrition be. And these interested research or they were investigators were like, okay, we're going to actually see behind the screen, you know, look behind the curtain and actually see, is there any kind of corporate influence on the A&D? And they found that indeed there is.
And the
And
A&D, just for our listeners, is the A&D the one setting who's setting the guidelines for schools and for the school cafeterias? Like who's setting that?
so it's the USDA that sets all the nutrition standards for the schools, for the military, kind of federally funded service organizations. And so it's the USDA, but the USDA gets input from the A&D and other health officials that are captured by these corporate interests because the corporations are providing financial support to these organizations. So, and like NTI, we don't get any support from any kind of food corporation. So everything that we teach, is independent, all that kind of stuff. So we can really say what we say because it is evidence-based, not because someone is paying us to say it, but because that's actually how the body works. That's actually how the nutrients work. And that's not the case with much of the nutrition guidance that is out there in the mainstream that is used to make policy decisions, that's used to create
We're talking
programs, et cetera.
not just school lunch programs, but just a personal situation that just happened. I have a 1-year-old. He goes in for his 1-year checkup, and my pediatrician, we're sort of transitioning from formula, et cetera. And I was like, so what's he supposed to do? What does this look like? And he's like, I'm supposed to tell you that you're supposed to go to whole milk.
Yeah.
That just sets the tone for what's about to happen, right? So then he's like, but I have a functional medicine practitioner, physician practitioner working with him, which means he MD, but also got the functional medicine training. And he's like, I'm not convinced anymore that this is it. And he's like, I also got 5 minutes of nutrition training. He's like, I'm not a nutrition trained person. He's like, but there are guidelines that I'm supposed to tell you to do this. And he's like, he's like, and my family drinks this and we have a lot of kids. He's like, but I'm not convinced that this is the way to go anymore. My son has allergies. It's inflammatory. It doesn't matter what it is. The point is like, where do we go as consumers to get the information when the people writing the rules may or not be influenced by these different
Yeah.
these entities, right? And so so what do we do, right? As a consumer, I'm looking at this from the consumer lens, right? How do I know where to get information?
Yeah. Well, I hate to be cliche, but you have to do your own research and get guidance from people who are going to be recommending resources that are credible. And, for children's health,
But we say that, but
I know.
A&D, they
I know.
look credible.
I know,
You
yes.
still are credible. Like I'm not knocking dietitians. Like any, we have everybody on our platform. We believe in there's a place for everybody, but it's just really hard when you start pulling back who's
Mhm.
paid to be where. So
Right. Well, and so once again, it goes back to when you're getting that information, are they actually explaining the mechanism of why they are making the recommendations they are making? And, when I say mechanism, I mean, how actually is that nutrient or that food interacting in biochemistry? Why are they making that recommendation? If someone can't explain why, like it's really easy to say what, it's really easy to list off, you should be eating this, 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 this. You shouldn't be eating this, 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 this. That's fine. But that's a very surface level. To really understand if the person that you're going to is giving you credible information, you need to ask why. Why are you recommending that food? What role does it play? What nutrients does it have? Are there any components of that food that limit bioavailability? Is it a highly reliable source? Like you have to ask those kinds of questions to get them to be able to articulate what they know. And if they can't clearly articulate at a deep level what they know, then for me that's a red flag that they're just spouting off, sort of parroting what they've heard someone else say. Oh, well, everyone else says this food is not good for you. So I'm going to say it too. But if they can't actually explain it from a science based, biochemical related standpoint, then that's where my threshold for credibility and reliability exists. I need to know that they understand the mechanism of how nutrients and foods interact in the human body.
And then what about food labels? Are those causing some
Yeah.
can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. Food labels are like another sort of wild, wild west thing. Now, food labels are regulated by the FDA, but the FDA gets funding from, corporations have to pay the FDA to get approval for these food labels. So there is some financial machinations that are going on potentially, but low fat, good source of calcium, low cholesterol, no cholesterol, all of these things that we see on our food labels that imply something about health, there is an analysis that needs to be done for the FDA to approve those food labels or those labels to be put on food packaging. But then you have to go back to, okay, well, how does that actually influence health? And this is where people get excited and like, wait a minute, I actually need to go to school because to understand. So, what does that mean if something is low fat? How does that actually influence health, and what is the evidence behind that? And there's actually not a whole lot of evidence, quite honestly, that low fat is the end all be all of nutrient of
And
health.
isn't it person specific? And then when you look
Yeah,
at women, it's like, okay, well, in the reproductive years, are you like what's going on?
yeah,
Where are you at in the month? And what nutrients do you need for today? For
absolutely.
it's different, isn't it?
It
Different
is
every
different.
so that's why some of these diets, like I'm gonna go keto diet. Well, that doesn't work for everybody and it's not meant to be lifestyle. So there's a lot going on here.
Yeah, you are absolutely right. And here's another problem because you have all of these, very charismatic influencers, online influencers who are
Influencers, yes.
like, here's the best diet you can be on. Here's, everyone has to do this or no one should be doing this. And it's all very black and white and very linear. And once again, what we teach here at NTI is we teach this broad perspective of nutrition principles from, again, that science based, mechanistic standpoint so that as you're working with an individual client who has individual goals, not everybody has the same goal, right? So, an individual person who has biochemical individuality, has individual goals, our graduates are able to take this breadth of education that they have and pick and choose the pieces out of this palette of knowledge and tailor and individualize a nutrition plan for that specific person. If it's a woman who is, in her reproductive years and cycling, and understand how to tailor those nutrition guidelines to be best supportive of her monthly cycles, or a menopausal woman or a man who wants to increase muscle mass or whatever, like that's what we teach. And so we don't have this very narrow single protocol that we teach, like if this, then do this. Like we don't teach a single linear path. And I think that's what makes us different and unique because so many nutrition programs are based on those big messages that you get from these influencers. You go to school and all you learn is a ketogenic diet, or you go to this school and all you learn is a vegan diet. You go to this school, all you learn is, whatever, Mediterranean diet. Like I'm just naming names, but we teach everything with the understanding that there are going to be people where bits and pieces of all those things are going to be best for this person who's sitting in front of you.
Yeah, and I also want to clarify too, in case this is a myth, but I'm sure people think that, most of the time you're only coming to nutritionists for weight loss or something of that matter. So the practitioners coming out of your school help with, I think, pretty much anything, right? And it could range
Mhm,
from the mental health issues as well as the physical, right? So it
mhm.
kind of all goes
Yeah.
together. So whether it's from helping with sleep, anxiety, depression, you mentioned asthma, help the diet change helped your husband. So And what other kinds of, I would call them issues or symptoms, are your practitioners able to help with? Like our listeners, if they're having any of what?
Yeah.
Would they say, "Oh, I didn't know I could go to a holistic nutritionist," or, the nutrition therapist master for
Mhm.
XYZ? You don't really put
Yeah.
two and two together.
Right. Right. So, so big sort of, um, you know, topics, big sort of things that we do. So gut health, and gut health can be anything from actual gut symptoms, bloating, gas, constipation, diarrhea, etc., to, brain fog because of poor gut health. Another big category would be like blood sugar dysregulation. And blood sugar dysregulation, we can provide guidance for people to achieve optimal blood sugar regulation. And so the kinds of things that people could be experiencing is like getting, shaky, irritable, kind of hangry symptoms when their blood sugar crashes, or, having insulin resistance and needing to adjust your carbohydrate intake to more appropriately regulate blood sugar based on insulin resistance. So, other things that someone might be experiencing: autoimmunity, inflammatory conditions like asthma, like eczema, cardiovascular disease, as you say, mental health disorders, chronic fatigue syndrome. So these are all medical conditions that people get diagnosed for, by their medical doctor. We don't do any kind of, like, as a nutrition therapist, is outside the scope of my practice, certainly, to be diagnosing anything. But if someone comes to me and says, my doctor told me I have X, you know, IBS, SIBO, cardiovascular disease, high blood pressure, whatever. So, what they're coming to me for as a nutrition therapist or a graduate from NTI is to help optimize their diet to achieve better results, based on whatever kind of health condition they have. And or it could be, as you say, weight loss. I want to understand how to have better, weight management, or optimize my diet to get good performance
Yeah,
in
absolutely.
athletics.
All sort of, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely different types.
Yeah.
I didn't mean to exclude those. I just think that that's pretty commonly understood. I would need to go to a
Yeah.
nutritionist for that. But when you're like, oh, got asthma, why would I go to a nutritionist? But that just comes
Yeah.
into, and I bet all of the clients that you help are just mind blown when you go to actually say, what are you eating?
Mhm.
Who
Yeah.
knows what's uncovered at that point?
Yes, and I want to make it very clear. We are not a replacement for medical care. A nutrition therapist would never be a replacement for medical care, but certainly we do ask questions. What are you eating? We anyone who comes to a nutrition therapist, would be required to fill out a food journal so that we can at least have an understanding of what you're eating and be able to educate on how, your diet. If you came to me and handed me your 5-day food journal, I would be able to look at it and I'd be able to pick out the things in your diet that, based on my education, I understand can be influencing and having an impact on your current symptomology. Again, it's not a replacement for medical care. It is an adjunctive support
Yeah, absolutely.
uh,
Absolutely.
for, yeah.
And then there's also this world for women who are trying to conceive. Do you also help optimize diets? Because a lot of it can come down to not all of it,
Yeah.
but there's a bucket for nutrition and then
Mhm.
women who are trying to conceive. So is that something that you can also help optimize?
Yep, we definitely teach about fertility and conception and pregnancy, nutrition for all of these phases
It's amazing.
of life. We cover the gamut throughout our courses. All of these things that I've been talking about, these are individual courses or classes within courses, throughout our 13 courses that we teach here.
Yeah, that's just incredible. I wish this holistic nutrition was spreading a little bit faster than
Yeah.
some of this other information that's out there, and I think that really leaves the consumers, everybody listening, at kind of at a disadvantage, right?
Mhm.
On who
Mhm.
do you reach out to when you have these issues and you need to get help and you need a professional, not an influencer on TikTok sometimes.
Yes. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And, sometimes it is a little bit of experimentation, trial and error. You go to someone, they give you recommendations, you do it for a month or 3 months or whatever. If you don't find benefit, then don't keep doing the same thing over and over and over again. But also, if you go to someone and they just keep parroting what you've already heard and what everyone else is saying, that kind of gives you an idea that maybe they're not the right person because they're not going to be able to provide that personalized guidance. And I think that's really the important thing is someone who's going to actually listen to you, understand what your concerns are, what your health goals are, and then can actually, kind of like piece and place things to match your health goals and say, okay, well, this is your health goal. Here are some things that I would recommend that are specifically geared towards you, helping you achieve that particular health goal. And they can explain why. It's not just a across the board cookie cutter. Oh, you need to do this because that's what everyone needs to do. Like that. So those are things that I would say to help be at better advantage of being able to identify someone to actually trust.
And then when it comes to finding information online to help them with that, I don't even know if it's misinformation or just that person's opinion on something. How do you make sure it's science based? Like, is there anything for them for the
Well, I mean, certainly if you're reading an article or a blog or, an ebook or whatever, and you want to make sure that when they say something that, appears to be like, do this for this, and they are very emphatic that that is the thing to do. If they're not including their resources, their references, and they should be referencing science, research papers. And so they'll either have, a link to the science paper or a little number and has the science paper down below, whatever. And then, quite honestly, I think even lay people can go to that research and at least read through it and see if it makes sense to you. Like, I mean, the words don't have to make sense because there's going to be a lot of technical jargon, but at least the abstract, which is the very first paragraph in a research paper, you should be able to make something of that abstract to determine if what that person said actually has some validity and reliability. Now, of course, not all research, not all scientific research is accurate. I mean, there's these, statements out there that half of what's in the scientific literature is wrong. So how do you know which half to believe? Again, I think it comes back to valuing someone's ability to articulate, once again, I'm going to use this term, mechanisms of action, and also articulate a humble attitude about it. Because if someone comes across like, you must do this, you have to do this, this is this, and with this tremendous assurance that there is no other way to think about this and look at this, that really shows that they're not open and tolerant to the nuances that exist, because there are many nuances in nutrition. There are certain genetic things, there are certain life stage of life influences that will alter something being good for one person and not being good for another person. Like I'll just say, for example, like I know that I have a genetic mutation that is impacted by the use of quercetin. And quercetin is this, nutraceutical that has a lot of research, a lot of benefits. It has anti-inflammatory, antioxidant benefits. And there's tons of research. And quercetin is in a bunch of supplement formulations. And there are some people who are like, oh, everyone needs to be taking quercetin. It's this amazing, anti-inflammatory, which is great, except for me, because I know I have this genetic mutation. Quercetin actually makes this genetic mutation worse. So for me, I'm not going to take this supplement, or a supplement that contains quercetin. I'm not going to take quercetin on its own. And so there are so many nuances. And so you want to seek out a practitioner that is able to articulate and have a conversation that acknowledges these nuances and is not so direct and linear and, loud voice, you must do this. Because if they don't acknowledge that there are these nuances, then again, I think that says something about their credibility and their reliability.
Those are amazing and really great examples, right? Of people just saying, take this supplement, take this supplement. And, we talk about this a lot on the show is like having a baseline of where you stand, right? On
Mhm.
your testing, get your primary care, order the tests, know where you stand and the epigenetic tests that are available to us. But I think that's really important. Dan, thank you so much for being here and sharing all of your wisdom on just the food, the industry, the education. It's, the practitioners that come out of your school really have the ability to impact people's lives and really change them. And I think it's important for our listeners to know where they can go for accurate information to get the help they need. But a question that we ask all the guests on the show, if you could, can you share three fundamental pillars that contribute to your well being?
Yes. Well, obviously, diet is one. I am
It
very,
has to be.
I do not deviate from what I know to be a nutrient dense diet that meets my goals and the things that I am looking to achieve. And so I do not waver. I'm not one of these who are like, yeah, I eat well most of the time. I do not waver. So diet is a major one for me. Another one is I really try to do whatever I can to reduce my stress levels. I know, again, because of this one genetic mutation that I have, I know that stress is really impactful to me. It dramatically influences my health. I've had experiences where I can tie stress to, a compromise in my immune system function and all these kinds of things. So I am no different than I'm sure a lot of holistic practitioners who recognize the role that stress plays. So I intentionally do things to reduce my stress levels. I get movement every single day. There is not a single day that I don't do something that is moving my body in a unique way. And then I love to learn. Learning feeds my soul, feeds my psyche, and makes me feel like I have purpose in the world because when I learn something, I share it with others. And so,
And you're doing it in such a big way. You run a school. Yeah.
yes,
Not only are
yeah,
you learning, you're learning and then you're turning around and teaching,
yeah,
hundreds and thousands of people. It's amazing.
yes. So I would say probably most days I am spending time learning something about health and nutrition and how our food choices are so influenced by people who have nefarious goals. So I guess those would be my three.
Yeah, those are great. And do you want to tell all of our listeners how they can find you? And if anybody is interested in learning more about food and education and its impact on your health, or they want to take your program, can you tell our listeners how they can get more information?
Yes. So our website is ntischool.com. And one thing we have not talked at all about here is that in addition to our nutrition program, we have a chef training program, a natural food chef training program. And so they can learn all about our chef program or our nutrition program on the website. Additionally, every Wednesday at noon Mountain Time, we do a live 1 hour informational webinar where I go through kind of all the, highlights of our curriculum and people can ask questions directly. So we offer that every Wednesday. We also have a blog, a very well populated blog with lots of articles about health and nutrition. We have a directory to find graduates on our website. So you can find graduates to work with, as a practitioner. We have our own podcast and we have a handful of free ebooks. So those are all ways that people can learn more about our school as well as about the kind of things we teach.
That's incredible. And of course, we have a lot of the NTI practitioners on the platform. So if you guys are looking and want a session or a consult, check out sophiahealth.com. Diane, thank you so much for being here with us and sharing all of this wonderful information.
Yeah, you're absolutely welcome. It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening. This has been Sophia Unfiltered, a podcast by Sophia Health, the #1 marketplace for health and wellness. Find services, classes, and products from the top health and wellness providers. Book an appointment or join live classes now. I'm your host, Riley Reese. If this episode resonated with you, we'd love to hear about it in the comments section of your favorite podcast provider or with a 5-star rating. Let us know what your biggest takeaway from this episode was, or share it with someone you hope to inspire. Join us again next time for more real conversations, stories, and insights that help empower you with the knowledge and inspiration needed to transform how we care for ourselves.